Good. So I'm going to read an intro, and I think as I get into it, you'll probably see why I wanted to do this. And then I'm going to read our passage, and then we'll get into the actual message. This is about how Charles Spurgeon was converted. And if you haven't heard this story, you'll kind of figure out why I'm doing this now. Anyway, the great 19th century English pastor and evangelist Charles Spurgeon was converted to Christ as a young man on January 6, 1856. In Spurgeon's own words, it happened like this. I sometimes think I might have been in darkness and despair until now had it not been for the goodness of God in sending a snowstorm. Thankfully, we haven't had that today. But one Sunday morning, while I was going to a certain place of worship, when I could go no further, I turned down a side street and came to a little Primitive Methodist chapel. In that chapel, there were maybe a dozen or 15 people. I'd heard of the Primitive Methodists and how they sang so loudly they made people's head ache. But that did not matter to me. I wanted to know how I might be saved and if they could tell me. I did not care how much they made my head ache. Hopefully our singing isn't quite like that. But the minister did not come in that morning. He was snowed up, I suppose. At the very last, a very thin-looking man, a shoemaker or a tailor or something of that sort, went up to the pulpit to preach. Now, it is well that preachers should be instructed, but this man was really stupid. He was obligated to stick to his text for the simple reason he had little else to say. The text was, "Look unto me, be ye saved, all the ends of the earth," Isaiah 45:22. He did not even pronounce the words rightly, but that did not matter. There was, I thought, a glimpse of hope for me in that text. The preacher began thus, "My dear friends, this is a very simple text indeed. It says, look. Now look and don't take a deal of pains. It ain't lifting your foot or your finger, it's just look. Well, a man needn't go to college to learn to look. You may be the biggest fool, and yet you can look. A man needn't be worth 1,000 a year to be able to look. Anyone can look. Even a child can look. But the text says, look unto me. Aye, he said in a broad Essex. Many on ye are looking to yourselves, but it ain't no use there. You'll never find any comfort in yourselves. Some look to God the Father. No, look to him by and by. Jesus Christ says, look unto me. Some say you must wait for the Spirit's a-working. You have no business with that just now. Look to Christ, the text says, look unto me. Then the good man followed up his text in this way. Look unto me. I am sweating great drops of blood. Look unto me. I'm hanging on the cross. Look unto me. I'm dead and buried. Look unto me. I rise again. Look unto me. I ascend to heaven. Look unto me. I'm sitting at the Father's right hand. Oh, poor sinner, look unto me. Look unto me. When we'd gone on about that length and managed to spin out maybe 10 minutes or so, he was at the end of his tether. Then he looked at me in the gallery, and I dare say with so few present he knew me to be a stranger. So just fixing his eyes on me, as if he knew all my heart, he said, "Young man, you look very miserable." Well, I did, but I'm not accustomed to have remarks made from the pulpit on my personal appearance. However, it was a good blow. Struck right home, he continued, and you will always be miserable. Miserable in life, miserable in death. If you don't obey my text, but if you obey now this moment, you will be saved. Then lifting up, the man looked to Jesus Christ and he said, "Look," he shouted as only a primitive Methodist could do. "Look, look, look, you have nothing to do but look and live." I saw at once the way of salvation. I know not what else he said. I did not take much notice of it. I was so possessed with that one thought. Like as when the brazen serpent was lifted up, the people only looked and were healed. So it was with me. I'd been waiting to do 50 things, but when I heard that word, look, what a charming word it seemed to me. Oh, I looked until almost I have looked my eyes away. There I saw the sun, and I could have risen that instant and sung with the most enthusiastic of them of the precious blood of Christ, and the simple faith which looks to him alone. Oh, that somebody had told me this before. Trust Christ, and you shall be saved. And the theme of my message is going to be belief rather than look, but it's the same kind of concept. So I'm just going to read through our passage because I'm not going to quite do it the way Todd does things. I'm just going to read it through, and then I'm going to go with the message here that I've got prepared. So this is John 8:12 through 38. Then Jesus spoke again to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, You are bearing witness about yourself. Your witness is not true. Jesus answered and said to them, Even if I bear witness about myself, my witness is true, for I know where I come from and where I am going. But you do not know where I come from or where I am going. You judge according to the flesh. I am not judging anyone. But even if I do judge, my judgment is true, for I am not alone in it, but I and the Father who sent me. Even in your law it has been written that the witness of two men is true. I am he who bears witness about myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness about me. So they were saying, Where is your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. These words he spoke in the treasury as he was teaching in the temple, and no one seized him, because his hour had not yet come. Then he said again to them, I am going away, and you will seek me, and you will die in your sin. Where I am going, you cannot come. So the Jews were saying, Surely he will not kill himself, since he says, Where I am going, you cannot come. And he was saying to them, You are from below, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. Therefore, I say to you that you will die in your sins, for unless you believe that I am he, you will die in your sins. So they were saying to him, Who are you? Jesus said to them, What I have been saying to you from the beginning. I have many things to say and to judge concerning you, but he who sent me is true. And the things which I heard from him, these I am saying to the world. They did not know that he had been speaking to them about the Father. So Jesus said, When you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he. And I do nothing from myself, but I speak these things as the Father taught me. And he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do the things that are pleasing to him. And as he was speaking these things, many believed in him. So Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed in him, If you abide in my word, then you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. They answered, We are Abraham's seed, and have never yet been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Jesus answered them, Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits sin is the slave of sin. And the slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son does remain forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's seed. You are seeking to kill me because my word has no place in you. I speak these things which I have seen with my Father. Therefore, you also do the things which you have heard from your father. Okay, so instead of me, why is it not? There we go. So this is what I'm going to talk about this morning. First, I want to make sure that every time I get up here, I have a purpose in what I want to do in delivering the message. And so we'll go over what that purpose is this morning. And then, oftentimes, one of the first Sundays in January, we go through and have encouraged people to read the Bible. One year we had a plan where everybody read through the Bible together. Another year we had a specific version of the Bible that we handed out. And what was interesting with that version was there were no verse chapter markings except in little gray pieces up on top. And the idea was just to get people to read the Bible without worrying about necessarily where they were, what was going on. Just read the Bible. And so I am going to give an example of, for people especially that are like the tendency, which I think is good, is we go verse by verse by verse, even on Sunday morning. And there's sometimes where I think, depending on your personality type, if you just read kind of the context of the whole book, for example, and I'm going to use John, but you could pick a book, any book in the Bible, and do the same kind of thing, and that's what I'm kind of encouraging you to do, is just read it. Look at the big picture, because sometimes we end up we miss the big overarching story for looking at each of the individual trees in the forest. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm hopefully successfully weave it into this passage that we have this week. And so I just want everybody to be encouraged by what we have in the book of John 8 through 38. Okay, I'm assuming there are two groups of people in the congregation or in the room right now. One group, which would be similar to like Charles Spurgeon walking in off the street, are people that don't know Jesus. And so my purpose here is to say something, have the Spirit move, something happen, that you would believe in Jesus, look to Jesus through this particular passage. Number two is there are people, and I know, shall I say, just enough about our congregation, I know for a fact that there are people in our congregation that had a crappy week. And what I want is to be able to give some kind of a word, something in the message that's enough for you to hang on to your faith, hang on to your belief for yet another week, another day, another month, whatever it is. So my motivation is, in essence, belief, and you hopefully see how the book of John fits really well with the whole theme of the book of John, whether it's something new to you or whether it's something that's not new to you. Uh-oh. This thought is not going to work. Okay. So one of the ways that you could read any book in the Bible is pick like a curiosity item. So with the book of John, let's just say I'm asking the question, why on earth does the book of John even exist? Why is it there? Why did it end up in the canon? Why did John decide to write it as looks like an old man, and what was the whole purpose of it? And thankfully, and if you were paying very close attention to Todd's very first sermon on this, he outlined it, and I don't know why John actually gives the reason at the end of the book almost, but the reason is spelled out very clearly, and then once you know the reason for the book, what kind of patterns can you pick up in the book of John? And there are things, again, if you have been here over a long period of time, that you can, over the series with the book of John, there are things that, and I'm going to point out a couple of them, there are things that Todd has repeatedly gone over that actually delineates a pattern for what John is trying to do. Boy, this doesn't work, does it? Do I just need to tell you when I want to move it? Please move it. There. Please. That was the secret thing. Okay, John's reason for the book. Spelled out pretty good. John 20, 30, and 31. Therefore, many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these have been written so that you may believe, you see my belief theme is coming through here, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So one of the little pieces of each of these chunks is there should be something that delineates in each of the segments of the book of John, something about belief. Okay, please move it forward. Oops, did I do it? No. What happened? Did it work? Wow. I'm just... Okay. All right. Nope. Right there. All right. I should have my little guy down here so I know which. Okay, so does he actually say when he got to the first sign? And the answer is yes. If you look at the very first sign, the very first miracle in the book of John, he tells you. It's kind of like he waved a flag and he said, hey, this is the beginning of Jesus' sign right here in Cana. I'm not sure if people remember what that first sign was. It was turning water into wine, right? The second thing he says right in the same sentence is, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, what's interesting to me is, did his disciples not believe in him before this? I mean, there's a whole series of things going on here, but John put that Canaan wedding in here because it was significant enough, apparently, that the group of disciples that he was with at that time, that was the trigger, and they believed in Jesus. And what I'd like to do, thank you, is go through each of these. So I just made a quick list of some of the sections, because here's the other little piece. If you're noticing, when Todd starts off in one of these sermons, there's a map that goes up. And one of the reasons that there's a map that goes up is John is delineating sections by geographical movement. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and he went through Samaria and the woman at the well. And he went to Galilee, and he had the feeding of the 5,000 and the bread. So it's almost to me like, Tolkien with his Lord of the Rings, the little hobbits move along, and they go over here, and there's a scene. And they go over there, and there's a scene. So John, I'm not sure that John envisioned that we turn around and put chapter and verse marks in things, but there's movement that happens, and that should be an alert for those of us that are like more big picture people, and you go, oh, okay, what's going to happen now in Galilee? What's going to happen now in Samaria? What's going to happen in Jerusalem? And it sets up a scene, and then depending on how deep you want to dig, sometimes you go, okay, so that scene, what else kind of is the reason for what's going on behind that particular scene? Okay, so that is, let's try this. Okay, so let's go now to chapter 8, where we're chapter 8:12. And if you remember, I think, and we know for sure because of one of the verses that I just read, that Jesus is in the temple, and he happens to be in the treasury for some of this dialogue. But I think the scene still is the Feast of Booths that Ben talked about back in chapter 7. And then Todd had the water ritual, which was part of the Feast of Booths. And then we had the parenthetical note last week, right, with the woman caught in adultery. And then I think we're picking up the Feast of Booths again. And so why do I want to make a significance of the Feast of Booths and I am the light of the world? And we'll get to some of that. One of the other things I'm going to tie back into how you read your Bible. So if you don't know what the Feast of Booths is, where do you go? I know that both Todd and Ben have talked about this, but if you'd never heard of the Feast of Booths, what would you do? Where would you go look? Do you have your favorite commentator? Do you go Google? Find somebody on YouTube that can tell you what the Feast of Booths is? Would you believe, in my opinion, the book of Leviticus, I think Todd has said this, where Bible reading programs go to die, the book of Leviticus, I think, is God's Bible dictionary for the Bible. If you look through that, there's just and chapter 23 goes through, and I'm hoping not to be too sacrilegious. The chapter 23 of Leviticus, to me, is the party chapter of Leviticus. It goes through the Sabbath, the Passover, the Feast of Harvest, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Booths. God is asking his people, to stop. I mean, the 1 and 7 Sabbath is built for us to rest and just remember who God is. The Feast of Booths, as we're going to get into, is the party around tents and all kinds of other sort of things. I would like us to think of the Old Testament not necessarily as a bunch of rules, but they are rules and they are explanations, but in a sense it's God's Bible dictionary. Okay, let's see. I don't know if that worked or not. And so just to emphasize this is the party chapter, Leviticus 23:40, and you shall be glad before Yahweh your God for 7 days. I mean, if that isn't an invitation to rejoice, eat, have fun, I don't know what is. The other thing with the light stuff is apparently the Feast of Booths in remembering God leading the Israelites through the wilderness. He has a pillar of fire, right? So at night there's a pillar of fire. During the day there's a cloud. Some of that, now this one isn't in Leviticus that I could find, but some background to that, it appears that all of Jerusalem was lit up, like a big Christmas tree that we would have in our day. They even had priests that would learn to juggle, and they would learn to juggle flaming torches. So you can just see like a night scene in Jerusalem. There's lights going, guys are juggling. On top of that, they've got tents on top of buildings. They have tents in the street. They have tents in front of the temple. Now, we camped as kids. We camped when we had kids, Jay and I. I thought camping was fun. My mom hated it, which I think even to this day my dad has never quite caught on to. It was a ton of, but one of the most fun that everyone in our family could agree is like when we got a little new, like a new tent or something, or a new camping piece of equipment, we'd go out in the backyard and we'd set up a tent and we'd try it out. Now that is the way to camp, even for my mom. If there was a problem with anything, you just go back into the house, you can get cleaned up, you can cook like you're used to, you don't have to deal with all of the, so I picture the whole party in Jerusalem with the Feast of Booths is like me as a kid camping in the backyard. The entire city is out camping outside, and if there was a problem, they just can go in the house and fix their food like they normally would do. Let's see. Let me do this. Okay. John 8:12. We're finally there. I bet you thought we'd never get to the first verse of John. I am the light of the world. He who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of light. I think Jesus is taking the context of the light, just like he took the context of the water, whether it's the woman at the well, that took the context of bread after the miracle of feeding the 5,000. He's trying to take something concrete that people understand and go, okay, let's try this. It's a little bit like the chasm. He's trying to bridge the communication gap. He spent 1,000 years or whatever the length of the time in the Old Testament of building up all of these experiences so that Jesus could come and try to communicate to the people of Israel that he is the Messiah. So the Jewish leaders at this point they've pretty much put a warrant out for Jesus' arrest, number one, and every interaction with them tends to be kind of contentious through this whole thing. The other thing you'll notice that I mentioned briefly here is in verse 20, there's a very specific reference to he's in the temple treasury. And I think one of the things is to just anchor that, like what John has done with all of his other scenes. Okay, this particular conversation happened in the treasury. And I think the second thing is he's pointing out that even though there's a warrant out for his arrest, the Jewish leaders could have arrested him right there and then, but they didn't because it was not Jesus' time. In other words, Jesus, God the Father, have got the entire timeline for his crucifixion week under their control. So then we get to verse 28, and the piece here, I'll just read it. So Jesus said, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and I do nothing on my own initiative, but I speak these things as the Father taught me. And then here's my little key, just like water into wine in Canaan, verse 30, many came to believe in him. What to me is so fascinating with all of these, and many came to believe in him, in this particular case, in my opinion, it really wasn't even a miracle. It was just this contentious argument that he was having with the priests. And he says, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he. And people go, oh yeah, he's the Messiah. And sometimes I think we get into, like when we're trying to worry about people understanding or people convincing somebody that Jesus is the Messiah, we end up almost over arguing at times. We just need to pray, and almost like Spurgeon was ready to believe. He walked into that church wanting to believe, and it didn't matter how crude the poor guy was that happened to have to preach that morning. The Holy Spirit worked through that guy, and Spurgeon believed. So these guys, in this context, didn't really even know that the crucifixion was going to happen, had no idea that the resurrection was going to happen, and they believed. As soon as, it's kind of like Jesus says, I'm the light of the world, lift up the Son of Man, and they believed. I'm going to try that again. Ooh. Nope. Oh, then I did 2. Nope. This will be the, is it like I'm not pointing at the right thing? Okay, there we go. I'm just going to leave it alone. Maybe I should just leave it at this point. So there's a clip out right now on, I think it started on YouTube or whatever. It's a small section of a sermon by Alistair Begg, and it's called, I think the way it's described as the man in the middle. And if you want to talk about somebody that came to belief in Jesus and could do absolutely nothing, and yet then you look through this and was free and all, it would be the thief on the cross, right, that came to belief. And the whole chunk that Alistair sort of builds up is, isn't it going to be fascinating to talk to this fellow when you get to heaven? And you ask him, so how did you get here? What did you do, right? What did the thief do? He believed. He was tied up on a cross. That was it. He could do, sometimes we add all of these things. And so since we're speaking about popular culture a little bit, there's another guy that every once in a while I listen to or whatever, the cartoonist that created Dilbert, Scott Adams. So he's dying of cancer and he's tried everything. And this past week or 2 weeks, he said, I'm done. I've tried everything. I'm going to die. That's what it's going to be. So he put out this little clip that was addressed to the people, I don't know, the people that care that are Christians. And he goes, I want my Christian friends to know that I am going to convert to Christianity before I die. And he went on and he's got this long thing, but then buried at the end of it, and I hope that I've lived a good enough life. And you go, this is still not, if that's still really reflective of what he's thinking, I'm going, this isn't how it works. So did the thief on the cross live a good enough life? He believed, right? Did these people in the temple live a good enough life? They simply believed. So if Jesus has been working on our hearts, okay, I'm going to try this. And let's see. Why does it look like I'm going back and forth? I don't know. Okay, anyway. What I want to get to is the freedom part. So Jesus kind of closes all this out. Number one, he says, he's speaking to the people. It almost looks like, so Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed in him, if you abide in my word, then you are truly my disciples. And you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And he has a bunch of other things. And I was thinking about freedom. So what does freedom mean? And what does freedom in belief mean? And I think there's like 3 different components to freedom that make sense. So for example, I am free to skydive. I have absolutely no interest in skydiving. I am absolutely terrified of the whole thought of it. So if I was going to be free in skydiving, what is step number one for me to skydive? I need to have a desire to skydive, or skydive would be like somebody chaining me up and kicking me out of a plane, right? So the very first thing in the freedom of belief is God needs to change our hearts, right? And I had a pastor growing up, I think I've said this before, but he describes the belief, and then once you're a Christian, he goes, it's like God changes your wanter. God goes in, and the stuff that you used to desire isn't what you desire anymore. Now, I'm praying that I never desire to skydive. That I have absolutely zero interest in skydiving. But it's not freedom to come to Christ and then, oh man, I got a bunch of rules and stuff, right? The freedom comes in our desires have changed. And I kind of relate to I think it's in Luke 9, I have faith, please help, or I have belief, please help my unbelief. I mean, I think each of us recognize we are not completed, we're not fully there yet, that kind of thing. So one of our prayers tends to be, please help me in my unbelief. The next thing is ability, right? So I have not been trained in skydiving whatsoever. I would not have any kind of ability to skydive. So what's the next thing in a freedom with Jesus is we need faith, right? And so we need to have the gift of faith given to us. So my prayer is, and actually the prayer that I've been praying for the kids and the students and the adults that have been in Green Bay, is a desire and a new faith that is born. And lastly, if I was going to skydive, I have to have some kind of opportunity. I do not have access to a plane with a large door that somebody could kick me out. I do not have a parachute. I don't have any of that kind of equipment. And what Jesus has done, and what I find so amazing with all of the pieces of the book of John, is people are believing even before the death and resurrection, but Jesus knows that it's coming. So the opportunity is the fact that Jesus actually died and has rose again from the dead. So that is where the freedom comes from, and I think we could end like this. So we're going to close. Actually, bring up the last song since I can't get to it. And where did Jay go? Yep. Do you want to lead us in the doxology? Yep.